Kraftwerk. I mean, you've definitely heard their influence, whether you know it or not. But do you really know the story of the band that basically programmed the soundtrack for our modern world? Okay, to really get a handle on just how huge their impact was, listen to this. The famous music mag NME once said, the Beatles and Kraftwerk, the two most important bands in music history. I mean, wow, that's not just a big claim, that's a monumental one. They're putting them right up there with the Fab Four. So that's the big question, right? How on earth did four super reclusive, almost totally anonymous guys from Dusseldorf, West Germany, end up becoming the architects for, well, for the future of pretty much all sound? All right, to figure that out, we've got to go back, way back. Our story kicks off in the wild experimental art scene of early 1970s West Germany. This is where Kraftwerk wasn't just a band, it was about to become the man machine. So, the band officially gets its start in 1970. It's founded by two guys, Ralf Hutter and Florian Schneider, who were actually classically trained musicians. They were part of this really vibrant, out there German experimental scene, a scene that the British music press kind of jokingly nicknamed krautrock. And you really have to understand this transformation because it's the key to their whole story. See, before Kraftwerk, these guys had a band called Organization. It was much more of a traditional setup, rock instruments, freeform jams. But then, poof, with Kraftwerk, they just stripped it all down to the studs. They ditched the normal instruments and went all in on synthesizers, drum machines, and vocoders. They were forging this totally new, super disciplined, minimalist electronic sound. And their commitment to technology from the get-go was, frankly, obsessive. These guys weren't just going to the music store and buying instruments off the shelf. No way. They were building their own gear, like this custom vocoder right here, which is responsible for that iconic robotic vocal sound. This absolute dedication to creating their own tools in their own private studio, the legendary Kling Klong studio, that was the secret sauce for everything that followed. Okay, so they've got their tools, they've got their philosophy, and now Kraftwerk enters its golden age. We're talking about the period from 1974 to 1981. And they didn't just find their sound in these years. They launched a full-blown revolution, the robot pop revolution. So what in the world is robot pop? Well, it was actually Kraftwerk's own name for their style. The best way to think about it is like a formula, right? You take catchy, super minimalist pop melodies, you drive them with these repetitive, almost hypnotic machine-like rhythms, you build the whole thing with only electronic instruments, and then you top it off with these sparse, vocoded vocals. That's robot pop. And this formula led to an absolutely incredible four-album run that really cemented their legacy. It all starts in '74 with Autobahn, which becomes this surprise international smash hit, even cracking the top 5 in the US. Then in '77, you get Trans-Europe Express, a record so far ahead of its time, it actually won a disco award. Next up, '78's The Man Machine, which gave us that iconic look, the red shirt and black tie. And finally, in 1981, the totally prophetic Computer World. The single from that album, The Model, actually went to #1 in the UK. And here they are. This was the legendary lineup that made all that magic happen. You had Karl Bartos and Wolfgang Flür on electronic percussion, joining the founders, Ralf Hutter and Florian Schneider. This quartet right here, they were the definitive man-machine ensemble. But their music wasn't just about cool new sounds. It was about totally new ideas. They were writing songs about modern life in post-war Europe. So you get these big themes like travel, technology, communication. Those were front and center. But they were also digging into the paradoxes, the way we celebrate technology, but at the same time feel this kind of urban alienation it can create. It was literally the sound of humanity's relationship with machines being figured out in real time. And their image, it was just as calculated and controlled as their music. You had the matching suits, the deadpan expressions. They would even send life-sized mannequins of themselves to do press interviews or perform on stage. This legendary reclusiveness, it wasn't just them being weird. It was all part of the art. It reinforced that whole man-machine idea. So, okay, they've built this completely unique universe of sound and style, but how did that become the blueprint for basically all modern music? Well, let's break down the code they wrote. I mean, their musical DNA is literally everywhere. You can hear it directly. Early hip-hop, for instance, was basically built on their beats and melodies. Africa Bambaata's genre-defining track Planet Rock, the melody is lifted straight from Trans-Europe Express and the beat comes from Numbers. And this isn't just an old-school thing. Decades later, a band as massive as Coldplay built their hit song Talk around the melody from Computer Love.
Seriously, the list of genres they kicked off or inspired is just staggering. They laid the entire groundwork for synth-pop, they provided the essential beats for early hip-hop, they directly inspired the birth of techno in Detroit and house music in Chicago. Post-punk, electro, ambient, you name it. Their influence is almost impossible to overstate.
But don't just take my word for it. The artists they influenced say it best. Here's what Martin Gore from Depeche Mode had to say. For anyone of our generation involved in electronic music, Kraftwerk were the godfathers. The godfathers. That says it all, really. But here's the thing, Kraftwerk wasn't just some 70s flash in the pan. Nope, their story kept going, constantly adapting and evolving, all the way into the 21st century. And just look at this evolution. It's stunning. On the one hand, you see a concert from 1976, just mountains of custom-built, bulky analog gear. And on the other, a modern show. It's a sleek, immersive 3D performance. It just goes to show you how they have always been on the cutting edge of technology. So how did they pull that off? Simple. They embraced change. All that massive, probably super delicate hardware from the old days, it eventually got replaced by powerful laptops and sophisticated software. And what that did was allow them to perfectly replicate their incredibly complex studio sound live on stage. They basically created a mobile clang-clang studio they could take on the road. And then, finally, in 2021, the official recognition came. The music establishment made it official. Kraftwerk was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, a formal acknowledgement of their role as true pioneers who literally shaped the sound of the world we live in. Which kind of brings us full circle and leaves us with one last big thought. Think about it. Their 1981 album was called Computer World. Well, all these decades later, we're living deep inside that world. So the question I'll leave you with is this. As we live our lives in this future they predicted with such chilling accuracy, was their music a celebration of what was to come, or was it a warning?